Hello and welcome to another Soul Wisdom Exchange. I'm Regina from at Maitri, and I am a Soul Wisdom mentor, an intuitive artist, and an art channel. And I love having conversations with other Soul Wisdom explorers. So today I actually have two guests on. We've got Jenna and Sara of Well and Wander, and I'm super excited to talk to them about the wisdom of their soul languages. And let me explain a little bit for anyone who's new to the show about what I consider to be soul wisdom languages. It is our authentic ways of knowing and being, or in other words, expressing yourself and receiving information. So, Jenna, Sara, how are you today?
Hi, we're great.
Excellent. Yay. It's so good to have you here.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I'd love for you both to introduce yourselves as individuals and then also talk about what is Well and Wander and where did it come from. So Sara, would you love to start?
Sure. I'm Sara Gardner. I'm a mixed media fine artist. I moved up to Bar Harbor, Maine last year to embark on this new adventure with Jenna. Yeah. And why don't you go ahead and then we can talk about Well and Wander.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm Jenna Young. I live here in Bar Harbor. I'm an entrepreneur and own a few restaurants and an inn. And I'm also a mother. And I've really found a passion in leadership, whether that be leadership of myself or of others, and have paid a lot of attention to that over the last few years. And Sara and I went to high school together and have stayed friends throughout the years. And during COVID, we had an extra space available and asked Sara if she wanted to come up, work remotely from here and to just spend some time out in nature. We live right next to Acadia National Park.
I got to escape Atlanta for a while.
At that point, we were also just needing something different. And having her come up was really exciting. And then we started to hatch some dreams and plans.
We did. We're always talking about like, what's your purpose? What are you manifesting? And we speak the same language in that way. So we just started talking about what we were thinking about, what we were passionate about, and we had both been thinking about different things that fit so well together that we were like, I think we're talking about the same thing. I think we should do this together. And Jenna's husband, Jeff, was so supportive of our idea. And yeah, we began the plans and it just fell into place. And now it's happening.
Nice. And so this was the beginning of Well and Wander, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. So can you tell everyone a little bit about what is Well and Wander? What is the goal behind this adventure?
Yeah.
Okay. So Well and Wander is a series of wellness retreats. And we hold them here right downtown in Bar Harbor on the edge of the ocean near Acadia National Park. And it's a real opportunity to show up and fill your own cup, whether that be through workshops that we offer, looking at some old stories that you're ready to let go of or ways that you're holding yourself back, getting out in nature, doing some painting lessons with Sara, eating awesome food. We just look for all the ways that it's so amazing to receive and give back to ourselves. Yeah. Some of it is really heart focused and how we're feeling. And some of it is really knowledge and cerebral and taking a good, like knowledgeable look at how we talk to ourselves. And so
I love it.
It's a lot of how our conversations go when we're venting about something and then really looking at the underlying issue and then feeling what that feels like and learning how to let it go. And as we continue to do that together as friends, we realize that this is really something that we could bring to others as well.
Oh, so
it's
beautiful.
Like a vacation, with deeper inner work and lots of connections.
I love it. Yeah.
Good one.
I have for many years, I've had this dream of doing like solo retreats with a person where we just go somewhere and like, I'm like, we do that kind of work together, but it's like, we just go on this solo retreat. But you get to have me as your personal like wellness guide while you're there.
Cool.
I just think that sounds like so much fun. I think it would be fun for me, and hopefully it would be really fun and healing for the other person too. But I love that vision that you painted, and then you're like, let's do it. Like, let's make it happen.
Right.
So, beautiful. And you host these at the Yellow House, correct? And that's, do you want to talk a little bit about the Yellow House?
You should, because are here all the time.
So
yeah.
I manage Yellow House. So when we were first talking about the idea for Well and Wander, we needed a space to do it. Jenny's husband actually came up with the idea to start looking at inns.
Nice.
And so it benefited us in two ways. The first way was to have a space to hold the retreats and to have it at the base of Acadia National Park. This is the destination. We'd always be able to use the space, but also it allowed me to move up here because I manage the inn now. So it gave me an opportunity to work here so I could leave my corporate job and spend time here. So Yellow House is a 7-bedroom inn. It was built in the the late 1800s. It's steps away from the ocean, steps away from downtown. It's such a special little place. The energy here is so good. Our guests are wonderful. It's nice and cozy. We've completely redone the landscaping and the interior of the common spaces just to make it, feel like home.
Beautiful. Yeah, if you don't already, you should definitely follow Yellow House on Instagram. They post beautiful, beautiful pictures, and it just makes you want to be there. So much so, actually, I was talking to both of these ladies before we got on to the show today, and I was like, I'm so excited because eventually I'm going to, hopefully next spring, host an event at the Yellow House. And I think that it's just a gorgeous place to be. And I can feel the energy of it through Instagram. So I can only imagine how beautiful it is once you get there. So thank you for creating that space and making it available to everyone.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about soul wisdom languages. And I know you said, as you were introducing yourselves, that you speak the same language in that way. And I would love to hear you elaborate on what that means for you.
Okay.
I would say, well, when Sara first said we speak the same language, what that means to me, and I don't know that I would say this is my soul wisdom language, but what us speaking the same language looks like is that we will feel things and we allow ourselves to feel them, but we'll also really pause to look at the stories that lie behind that and where we ourselves are perpetuating some of the struggle that's coming up in our lives. And we're not afraid to look at that. And we're not afraid to look at it for each other and for ourselves and to see the truth. And then to make a choice to let that go. And it helps us move through things so much more quickly when we aren't resisting. First of all, we're not resisting the feeling. And secondly, we're not resisting the lesson that's behind that feeling. And that is like such a blessing to have a friend who I speak that language with.
Yes.
It's like, oh man, I feel this and it sucks and all of this. But at the same time, what's behind that that we could look at for ourselves or for each other? And we're not defensive about it. And we don't have our ego saying like, no, it's not me, it's them. So that when we speak the same language, that's what I think.
Yeah. And it's so, that she sums it up perfectly. Usually I let her speak. She can translate for me. It's great. Different skill set. It's great to have a friend who can translate for you. She's better with words.
Yeah.
It's so great that we do speak the same language because we can help each other identify our patterns too. You can really like see outside of the situation.
Like see things that I'll go through something and she'll help me be like, well, this is kind of similar to what was going on last spring, remember? And then I'll be like, how is this continuing to happen?
Right. Yeah.
So what you're describing right now is a way that you use your own personal soul wisdom languages to be in communication with another in relationship. And this is like so exciting because one of the reasons why when we were talking about doing a soul wisdom exchange, right, with either one or both of you, and I kept thinking it would be really great to do this with both of you because many times in this podcast, we have one person at a time. And when we talk about it from the lens of this is how I see the world. This is how I experience the world. But to be able to kind of step out and have an external view of how people use that wisdom in relationship with each other is something that you don't get to see that often, right? However, it's something that we do all the time. And so your explanation of that is really beautiful in knowing, like, being able to talk about, okay, I see things this way, or even Sarah, when you were like, she's better with words than I am, but you still are able to communicate on the same level. But what you do is you bring in harmonious or complementary ways of being and exchanging information that then leads to this communication that's really, really beneficial for both of you, right?
Our partnership
yeah.
works so well because we complement each other in different ways. So
Yeah.
our friendship and our business partnership works so
Mhm.
well in that way.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And so even in looking at, like, we speak the same language, right? You're speaking it from different perspectives or through a different lens or through a different modality, but it's still encompassed in the same kind of structure, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I love that. Often I think we think or are told that we have to speak exactly the same thing, right? Like, I've traveled a lot in my life. I know, Sarah, you've traveled. I'm not sure, Jenna, how much you've traveled, but just guessing that you've traveled a bit. And when you travel somewhere where the language that you speak as your native language and the native language of where you are not necessarily the same, you can still communicate really well, even not having that verbal language, right? Because you can bring in all these other aspects of different languages. You can use body language, you can use, written language, you can even use a translator. And the words necessarily aren't, or the language that your go-to language isn't necessarily the most important part of that. It is that exchange that's really the important part, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we use our intuition really well with that, and with others too. We can really feel the energy that other people are bringing, and we know how to respond to that, and with each other too. I feel like we're both really in tune with that.
Yes. Yeah. In a group setting, I know that we're feeling the energy of the group, or seeing who's leaning back and who's leaning forward and who is maybe looking uncomfortable, and really being able to take that into account as we move forward. And that's a lot of what you're describing as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So tell me, how did you get to know these things about yourself? How did you come into that relationship and that confidence in your intuitive knowing?
I made so many mistakes, and I would ignore my intuition a lot, and then I would see it turn into a dumpster fire. And I started to put together that pattern of, when I ignore my intuition, in hindsight, I wish I hadn't. And so I really started to trust myself, and I would say, I knew, I could tell, but I didn't listen and I didn't pay attention. And now next time I will.
Yeah.
And again, that speaks back to what I was saying about being able to look at myself as part of the equation, and that I can change myself and I can change how I perceive things. And that's truly the only thing I have control over. So I, as a leader especially, I laugh about some of the techniques that I used to use when I was early on, because I'm really self-taught. And now I can read situations and really be able to feel when something's amiss, or when maybe someone needs a one-on-one conversation or needs a little bit more attention from a leader so that they can feel heard. And so the process I went through was just messing up a lot of times, and then forgiving myself and moving forward, I would say, is how I did.
You are really good at knowing what other people need to hear, though. You can really meet people where they're at with what they need. So I see her working with different types of people, and I can see the different styles she uses to communicate with them. Different. Everybody's different, and she really respects that and honors that, and which makes you such a great leader.
That's very nice.
It's so important.
Woman over here.
That's good. We need to have, I think those are both important things, right? Like, we need to have the experience of messing up, right? Like, going through our own journey, having our own path. I mean, I've messed up a million gazillion times, and that path of messing up is what makes me a good leader. Like, I feel absolutely the same way in that. And also taking that step to say, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to use that wisdom that I've learned in this past situation, not judge myself for it. But I mean, not that I haven't done that, but like actively working to not judge myself and use it instead to propel myself forward and then give back, right? Like, or give forward to someone else. And then also having that celebration. Like, I love that you have someone there to celebrate with you, because that part is so key. It's so important to say, have somebody reflecting back to you too, like, this is a strength. Like, you're really good at this, and I celebrate that and I appreciate that. And to be able to receive that the way that you did too, is like, thank you. I think oftentimes we're like, oh, thanks. Yeah, it's nothing, right? But it is important, and that is very necessary as well. So I love how you interact with each other.
Thank you. That's so funny. Not funny. I'm really impressed with how you are able to watch two people exchange and be able to read the situation as well as you do too. Because we've known Sara for a long time, but I don't know you that well, and we've never really interacted with the three of us. So you're on it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I do. So I appreciate that compliment as well. So, Sara, tell us about you. Tell us about what your role in this is.
So from when I was a small child, I always felt this like intuition. I always felt connected to something bigger than me. Mm-hmm. So I would listen to that and use it in my life, but I had to make so many mistakes, like everybody. So I could see things and I could feel things, but then my head would take over, my mind would take over, and I would talk myself out of things. And so I just had to do it enough times to see where I was the common denominator of the situation. And I'm like, oh, okay, I could see, when I would feel the intuition, and my head would override that. And then I would have to just learn that lesson the hard way. So I had to learn the hard way a lot of times, and really start trusting myself and trusting whatever, my higher power that was dropping in the intuition into me. And I still mess up. I mean, Mercury retrograde got me.
That was a rough one, by the way. Like, I can usually sail through pretty well, like just staying pretty mindful. But that one was like super intense.
It was a doozy. Why am I doing this? I know better. What's going on? So now I can really trust it, and to have someone to talk to about it really helps. It helps me see really clearly, and then to help others through it too. I really love being of service. I try to be of service in the recovery community with alcoholics and addicts. So I find a lot of joy, and it brings a lot of light to my life to help in that way and to be a leader in that way. And
beautiful. I think it's so needed, and in all areas. And whatever your magic is, most of the time we earn our magic through our own medicine. You've got to take that medicine over and over until it becomes, you alchemize it into medicine, and then you can share it with the world. And so I love that you're both doing that in your own way, and in your in your relationships with yourself and with others as well, because I think it's really, there's a balance that's needed, and it's not just giving, right? Like, to be in service, I recently have really transformed that word and realized that for me, to be in service is not just in service of someone else. It's also that being in service of whomever it is or whatever it is that I'm really giving to, that it really is more beneficial when it's something that gives to me as well, right? Because when I align my work, the service, work that I do, with things that I'm really passionate about, that are really personal, that sometimes put me in a vulnerable place, what it does is it also fills me in response, so it's this give, receive, rather than just give to give and then leaving yourself empty, right? Because that's just a toxic cycle.
No, I get so much out of it too. I learn so much through being of service to others. It really does fill me up and
raises your vibrational energy, and you can attract people and situations that are more in alignment with you as you raise up.
But I also feel like it's never done. Like I'm never done learning. We're never going to be done.
No, yes, I totally like.
Haven't we learned this already? Can't we just? We don't know, but we're constantly letting go, constantly looking at our stories.
It gets easier and faster,
definitely,
as we go.
Yeah,
and I was thinking too, as you were talking about the whole just giving to something that doesn't even fill you back up.
Mm-hmm.
I used to wear that like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And I used to use it to display how selfless I was and how, it was a form of being a martyr.
Yeah.
And until I could really own that about myself, I couldn't let that go. And once I could see it, and I'm like, oh, there's a payoff to me doing this, because then people will really think I'm super special. And it was always an ego-based reason that I was doing it. And once I could let go of those payoffs, I could clear the slate, clear my energy so that I could do things that actually were improving others and myself and filling me up and making me a better mom and a better friend. And it's really all tied together.
It so is. And I love that example that you just gave, because what you described, at least how I understand it, is that in both of those situations, you were receiving something, right? But when your intention was more about the outcome, how it's visible, right? Like what the outcome being received by others, then what you were receiving was kind of this like toxic reflection of that as well. But when you truly go inside and you do that from a place that's a pure intention from serving yourself and serving others at the same time, then it's not about how anyone else perceives it. And what you get is something that's very internally nourishing and infused with that same intention, and is really more beneficial for those that you're working with anyway.
Right. Completely.
Yeah. I love that. Sara, I have something that was coming up when you were talking, and it's about the balance between, you said that you would take an action, or you would feel something, and then your head would take over, right? And what I was getting with that is that there's this internal system of checks and balances. And a lot of times, especially when we have that experience where it's like, oh, my mind will take over, right? Like your mind we have this like supercomputer in our brains. And there is a part of our brains that are designed to basically like search through our entire database of all of our experiences, and probably those experiences that we've seen, heard about, read about, whether we experience them personally or not, and to scan every situation that we're in, right? To scan this database and look for danger. And then if there's any sign of that, to be like, alert, alert, abort this situation. And so when we are in that part of our brain and that part of our brain takes over, it can be that what you were explaining, right? Of like my brain takes over, and then I'd be like, oh, I pulled away from my intuition. But I think when we are really aware of that function, and also understand that that is the function itself is there to protect us, but it can use it like a checks and balances system rather than as like the dominant authority, then when that kicks in, we can use it as a way to say, oh, I'm going to take this warning signal and I'm just going to tune back in, right? I'm going to tune back into my intuition instead of allowing that to be, okay, now I'm going to act from this place, or I'm going to ignore that completely and I'm just going to continue to act from my intuition, because our intuition and our brain, right, that database system are both there for a reason. So it's like kind of that relationship. We have all these different relationships happening within us too. So I was thinking of that when you were explaining it, about how just like you were talking about you and Jenna having these kind of like different ways that you come into the relationship, our intuition and our brain also has a relationship going on. So it's like finding that way of balancing those, not to say that they're equal, but to bring them into that more harmonious, kind of relationship.
Definitely. Yeah. we have to do a lot of unlearning.
Yeah.
I think in order for that to happen, our body and mind are so connected. My body feels the things, it knows the things, and my mind takes over and I have to quiet it down. So meditation works really well. Coming back to the present moment really helps, just to be present, be in the now, and like, how is my body responding? You can feel it in your gut when something's not right. And then your head will overanalyze and be like, no, give them the benefit of the doubt. Or no, maybe I need to take this job because it makes more money or has better benefits or something. But my body knows, and my body started responding so strongly that I couldn't ignore it anymore. So at different points in my life, my body would start responding, and now I can tell. But even still, I still have to unlearn, like childhood conditioning, things we learned in school. We're not really taught to trust our intuition or even how to feel it or what it's saying, what it means.
But wouldn't it be amazing if we did? Like, I keep having this dream that we like go, we go into schools and teach kids how to use their intuition, and, teach parents how to understand what their kids' intuition looks like. And I don't know, sorry, that was like a total side note, but I just, I feel like it's time that we make this more important, in business, in parenting, in life, in all of our interactions. So, anyway,
definitely,
that's my little box moment.
There's a lot of reforming that we need to do.
Yeah, for sure. But I know we're doing it, a little bit at a time, and having the communities where you can go into those spaces, whether it's a retreat, whether it's a restaurant, even, whether it's an artist community, whether it's a community like AA or, any other kind of community where you're going in and you're helping to use your experience to share about that. I think that's really essential. So I love it. Let's talk a little bit about teachers and tools. So I know we've talked a little bit about, your personal journey and how you've come into these things, into this relationship, right? This deeper relationship with yourself. And I'd love to talk a little bit about what that journey, we talked about it internally, but how have you kind of navigated that journey? What tools or teachers or techniques has really supported you through that process?
I would say it's been a real combination of being open to the idea of therapy, of group recovery, of coaching. There were a lot of different paths that I took in understanding myself better. When I really started to understand that my passion was for leadership and communication, the specific people that I admire the most would be like John Maxwell. He's an incredible leadership author and advisor, and I just love all of his books. And so that was kind of the external. I really find this balance between needing things from the outside to help support what I know inside. So I would find, I went through phases where I was just reading all the books that I could read or listening to all the podcasts I could listen to. But then I needed to also pull that in and journal and manifest and meditate. And so finding that balance between what's coming in externally and what I'm feeling internally has been a real key and gift for me, so that I could move forward in a way that felt really aligned with who I am, but it was also informed from, they're experts who really do actually know these things that I can turn to and learn from. And I think I'm understanding the question, but I would say teachers.
Yes. You're definitely. And that's exactly, my personal philosophy as well is, aligning with teachers and tools and techniques that really support you. Those external sources, I believe you are gaining something from that, right? You're gaining a perspective, but really what they are every one of those things is a mirror that is reflecting something or helping something grow within you, right? And that you have to have that internal process as well to process it, to integrate it, and then to implement it again. And so what you explained about like reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts, I talk about that as like, I go through phases where I just eat books. And I mean, because I will just like, I'll not read anything for, a couple months because I'll be in this like outward mode. And then I'll go into this phase where I will just like consume book, like all these things, or podcasts and classes and all the things. And then I go, like integrate it. And then I go back out again. And I think people do that in different ways. So I love to hear about how others do it too. Because for me, it's like a certain time of the year, I'm in this mode, a certain time of the year, I'm in that mode. But for others, it might be like, I do a little bit of this and then I integrate, and then I do a little bit of that and then I integrate.
Right. And we live in a really seasonal place. So we have these wild, busy spring, summer, fallish. And then when we hit right now, everything's closing and we really hibernate. And that does create a great balance that works for me personally. I think for some people it's too extreme, but I really enjoy that. And the other thing, as you were talking, it was reminding me, I would read these books and think, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to try that. It sounds scary to start a challenging conversation like that, or to jump in and do the hard thing, but I would go and do it and prove to myself that I could do it. And then that helped me to improve my self-worth and feel like a little less afraid to do that again or to move forward. So that's really been, it sounds like you're similar to me, where it's like,
it's like, try it a little bit, get some more, try it, like it's that kind of like inching. And then there are these times where it's like, you're kind of in this like, or at least for me, it's like I'm in this like experimental mode, and then I get it. It's like it clicks, and then I'm like, whoo, quantum leap. And then I go into like another kind of practice or part.
Same. Level up.
Same.
Level up.
Exactly. What about you, Sarah?
I do the same. I consume a lot of podcasts, books. When I was doing my Master's of Fine Art at SCAD, I was really looking at the mind-body connection because it related so personally to me, because my mind and my body were really kind of like at odds a little bit. I've used therapy, coaching, the recovery community. So I've been researching and looking into these things and doing personal development for a long time, for years. I mean, probably since I was in my early 20s. But it really, and I was using it and trying to inspire others and things like that. But it wasn't until I really stopped using drugs and alcohol to change the way I felt and to bring me out of reality that, I mean, it just like launched me. Like it launched me into a new level. I was able to really see clearly and start manifesting and really feeling my intuition on a much deeper level and being connected. It also allowed me to be more present with others so that I could be there for them or learn for them, really have that exchange too.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think a lot of times the things that we seek looking for some particular thing, it's actually keeping us from that thing. It's like we look for, whether it's using drugs and alcohol to try to go deeper and have that connection with your spirit or with your mind or whatever it is, like to feel more or to be more in tune. And then that actually distracts us. Or if it's, for me, going into this like more corporate space and just always trying to like prove to myself that I had value, I had worth, I had something to share, I had something to give, and constantly hitting this like wall of never being enough, never having the right training, never having the right gender or whatever it was. And then finally realizing like, oh, I'm seeking this externally. And what I really need is to just get in touch with myself and be like, oh, I know, like I knew the whole time that I had this value, but I was just looking for someone else to tell me, I was looking for it outside of myself. And when I finally said, I don't need anyone else to tell me, I'm just going to do the thing that I know I'm good at. And I'm just going to be in that, right? I'm going to be present with that. Everything changed.
Oh, definitely. That's my story too. That's one of my stories too. Not good enough, not smart enough, not creative enough, whatever it is, I'm not enough. But I really had to learn the hard way. Like, nope, you are valuable just for being you. It's all inside of you. You have everything you need right there. So that's a huge lesson, and I continually have to keep aligning with that.
Absolutely. And then when you do, right, then you start to really attract the people that truly believe that understand that. And then it's kind of cool because then you do start to get that external validation that you were looking for the whole time. But it's like now you're like, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Like you receive it in such a different way, or at least for me, I do, because it's, I don't need it necessarily, but it's just this really nice confirmation.
Definitely. And it's difficult when people start to fall away because of that. Like some people will fall away from your life when you start to change, when you make these huge changes within yourself, when you're starting to level up and see things differently and know yourself differently, and you're able to communicate differently. So you'll attract those people, but it also means that some people won't be there. And that experiencing that loss is not easy. So we both had to
it'll
go
make
through
you
that.
feel like you're doing something wrong.
It will make you feel selfish too. Sometimes, it's, and let's talk about that, because I think that's something that's not talked about that much, or I've heard people talk about it in a way that's kind of, hurtful, like, oh, I didn't need those people anyway, or they're not ready in this like kind of blaming way. But, I think that there's another way that we can experience it. And it's a more heart-centered way, right? Of everyone's on their own path, and everyone has an opportunity to attract the people of where they are. And sometimes it's not a good fit, right? So it doesn't mean that that's a bad person. It doesn't mean that that experience that you had when you had it wasn't as beautiful as you remember it, right? But it just may not be, or as not beautiful as you remember it. But it doesn't mean that you were in the wrong place. It just means that now you're in a different place, right? Like, what is your take on that? I'd love to hear.
I was just going to say, I know because we've had these conversations recently, and I know what really helps us is this trust that, we do have a higher power. There's a bigger plan for all of us, that I'm not responsible for someone else's lessons or journey or how they see me, that I really, truly am only responsible for the choices that I'm making and how I'm choosing to move through. And that if that's not for some people, I can live with that now. I used to not be able to. I used to have like the real people pleaser. I needed everyone to like me. We've talked about that.
Yep.
But now, because I'm really loving myself so much, I can choose that is more important to me right now. But there was this rocky path, and Sara actually has a great visual, the path with that she has to share. But I think about that often. Sara is really good at creating the visual that I can always come back to and be like, okay, I'm feeling this way. And I'll think about the visual, and it's almost like this little mini meditation of like, oh yeah, it's okay because I can visualize it. So share that.
Okay. Thank you.
Because I think
I would love to hear.
Yeah. Well, and it's based on neuroplasticity, basically. Like we can change the pathways in our brain. Our brain is plastic and moldable. So the more we align with something, whether it's good or negative, those pathways are going to become stronger. So it's like a wagon going down a dirt road. The wheels create these grooves in that dirt road. So it becomes these really deeply ingrained pathways, just like in our brains. We've got these neural connections that
with like the big hump in the middle.
Really deep grooves. And when you want to do something different, when you're learning a different way of being or responding, you've got to get off that deeply grooved path. And so it's like, it's like really bumpy. And you've got to create a new pathway. And so the more you veer off and go through that discomfort, it's really bumpy and
but then
agitating.
It's so smooth.
And then the more you do it, then that becomes the new pathway, and that becomes the smoother road.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It takes a lot to get there. We can do it. It's possible, but you have to really put effort in and experience the discomfort of it.
So as people fall away, I look at it as that's happening, and I'm going back to my old thinking of there's something wrong with me, or I'm not liked, or whatever that old thinking is. And I'll be like, oh no, I'm just at that part in the path that's doing the bumpy part. And like, it's okay because it's temporary. And it's temporary. But that's that discomfort of you start to question yourself a little bit, like, wait, I want to change, I want to grow, but I want to also keep everything easy and around. And that's just it's not the truth. But when
not always. Yeah, exactly.
Like when growing becomes more valuable to you than ease is when you'll really just go through it.
And some people
say that again. I just feel like that needs to be said again. When growing becomes more valuable
than ease,
you'll
commit to going through the hard stuff.
When growing becomes more valuable than ease, you'll commit to going through the hard stuff. That is beautiful. That's really beautiful. And it's so important.
All because of the visualization.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, you get there, right? Because different people need different things. And this is one of the things that I think is really important, that, when it comes to talking about teachers or experiences or tools, right, which is what kind of led us down this path, so to speak, is that it's not necessarily that one teacher, and I say this about myself, like, of course, I want people to come and work with me and, do the work with me. But I know without a shadow of a doubt that they've done a lot of work before they get to me and are doing other things at the same time. And I celebrate that. And I totally support that and want that, because all of those things lead from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And then you have that aha moment, right? And it doesn't mean that, that is to be celebrated and to be honored, but it's also a culmination of all these different things that kind of lead into that, right? And then that grows and continues out as well. And I think that, that's just really important to know. No one that I've ever had on this show has come on and said, I read this one book and it changed my life. And it was the entire thing that I did. Like, I was in a whole nother place and then I did this and then magic, and yes, there are those moments that just kind of like push us, right? Like that catalyst that moves you into that space, or the time that something is said where it just clicks. But it is it's part of your path, and that path is complex. Right.
Mm-hmm. And there's always gifts on the other side of discomfort. Anytime I've ever been uncomfortable moving towards, the direction that I wanted to go in, that I knew was good. It's always uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But I've always gotten gifts on the other side of it. I've had to really grit my teeth and go through it and be super anxious. But every time I do that and I grow so much more, I'm rewarded in really big ways. Yeah. And Well and Wander is one of them. There was a lot of discomfort in getting here. This has been years in the making, really, on this path of growth and discovery. And I've had to push through a lot of it. But there's a comedian that I like. He says, nobody ever goes on a diet because their pants fit. Like you only start a diet when your pants stop fitting. So you won't change until you're in a certain amount of discomfort.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That makes so much sense. Do you know about neurobics?
No. I don't think so.
So I recently learned this term. Actually, I was watching Mel Robbins keeps popping up in my sphere of consciousness somehow. And but she was talking about neurobics, and when you were talking about the neural pathways and creating new neural pathways, there's actually you can do exercises for your brain, right? Mm-hmm. That actually it's like aerobics for your neural pathways, and you can train your brain to have those different patterns through associating something that is a known movement with a new thought pattern. And so for instance, she just wrote this book called The High Five Habit, I think is what it's called. And she was talking about high-fiving yourself in the mirror each day. And so she tells her story, about how she got to this, but essentially, she was just in this place where, she was really not feeling great, and was totally judgmental, and just kind of looked in the mirror at herself and was like, oh God, you look rough. What are you doing with your life, kind of thing. And something made her just be like, you know what, you got this. And high five herself in the mirror. And then I love how she puts it, but she's like, unicorns did not fly through at that moment. She's like, but I did it again. Like there was something, just this little something that just, kind of went off in my brain that was like, that kind of felt good, and then she said she did it again and did it again. But when she started exploring, why is this really powerful? Why is this really working? She encountered some, neuroscientists and all this research and everything. And it has to do with the fact that a high five is really, if you think about it, like when do you high five someone?
Right.
When you're celebrating, right? Like, can you high five someone when you're like, you're a fucking jerk?
Yeah.
Like, high five them. Like, no, right? Like you can't, or like, I hate you, and like high five them. It just doesn't, like, even when I say that and do it at the same time, it like makes me smile because it's a celebration. And there's actually science about like your hands being over your head, being like all of the moves that we do. Like you finish a race, right? Like, yeah, I did it. You celebrate, you hug somebody, you high five, like all of these things, all of those have to do with like a celebratory, like raising your vibration kind of energy. And when you do that and you do it in a place where you normally are, like, for instance, women in particular, looking in the mirror, have a lot of women won't even look in the mirror, won't even do it. And the majority of women, there are statistics about this that you can go and look up, but like the majority of women don't like what they see and highly judge themselves when they do look in the mirror. So to, get up, brush your teeth in the morning and look in the mirror, and instead of judging yourself about how your eyes are not, you've got bags under your eyes, or you're just not looking good, or you're not feeling good, or your pants don't fit right, or whatever it is, instead you say like, you've got this, and give yourself a high five. That can really help to rewire those neural pathways in your brain and create a new mindset.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah. It's super powerful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yes.
All right. So we have flown through our time, and we've come to the end of our conversation, but I know this is not the last conversation we will have. Definitely enjoyed this and loved having you both on the show today. Is there anything else? Do you want to share anything? Or I'll post the links of how to find you and work with you and everything, but anything you want to share before we wrap up?
I'd say just reach out and connect with us. And we're so interested in finding other people who are interested in this or passionate about it or curious about it, not because we need or want you to come to our retreat, but it really fills us up to connect with people and to have that back and forth or have them see what's resonating for them. I think that's kind of where we are with our business right now. We're doing retreats, but we're also just really trying to build our community and connect with people and see what's working and what's not. So that would be really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely connect with Jenna and Sara at Well and Wander, also the Yellow House on Instagram. So I'll put all of the links in there. And Sara is an amazing artist as well. Sara Baumgardner Art on Instagram. Yeah. Any other things, Sara? You've got anything to add?
No, I mean, we hope to see people with us next summer. We'll have a few retreats. We'll be posting those dates soon, but yeah, just like Jenna said, we really want to connect with people. It just brings us so much joy. And we like to help in any way that we can. Yeah,
absolutely. Beautiful. Yes,
Thank you.
Connect. It was great to have you here. Thank you so much. And for anyone watching, don't forget to subscribe or share it. This is a fantastic conversation. So share it with anyone who you think would really benefit from it. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.